Well, here I am at Ignite once again, and I'm here with a coworker of mine, Marcos Nogueira. We've crossed paths many times, a few times when he was just before an MVP, then when he was an MVP, then when he was working for Microsoft, and now back as an MVP.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're now an MVP for Azure, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my area now.
Okay, so what is your specialization with Azure right now?
So I'm focused more on Azure infrastructure, in this case, on Azure IaaS. Although I do a little bit of PaaS, because it's required, but that's the majority of it's more on Azure IaaS. Although Azure IaaS is starting to be pretty big, so it's more related to virtual machines, all the infrastructure of the hybrids that you need to do it, and with that comes a lot of other things that you need to learn and you need to be good at.
Yeah. So with Azure, like, what are some of the common challenges you're seeing with customers that are getting started in that space?
So one of the big things that I'm seeing is Azure is really easy to set up. But you coming and you put your credit card, for example, and then you start to deploy all of this. But then when you starting to use that more on the production base, that's where the starting things are not working and that they get probably not configured well. And because of that, you see a lot of people not adapting Azure like they should be. So one of the first things that I'm seeing on the client, it's this generic way to do it that it's not the proper way. There are other challenges that sometimes Azure have or the cloud have that we need to demystify all the time. Things like the privacy laws, the data sovereignty, where the data resides, and all of those things. But besides that, it's technology enabled. It's the way that it's starting to be too big that when they enter into this, they get lost completely. What they can do and what they can't do, and that is the most difficult part.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like, I see everything from bad assumptions around security to just how are you going to do your consumption billing. Like, just, like, I know for some organizations, chargebacks is a touchy subject, but who's consuming what, and how do we understand that and put it into our current processes?
Because it's the part of the Azure governance is starting to be really big, because we have several customers, and I know several organizations that they spin up this massive, and they spin up really well this massive Azure infrastructure, but then what they don't like is at the end of the month receive this huge bill.
Yeah.
And that is the part they say, oops, what we did. So, and to understand that, like, the first thing that they have to do, we have to shut down everything until we understand what we did.
Yeah.
And that's not the proper way to do it.
No, I understand that. Somebody goes in and because he didn't set restrictions or proper security, somebody fires up a gigantic virtual machine and it's burning like $3,000 a day worth of consumption. And unless somebody's watching the actual consumption, they don't notice the sudden spike in usage.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, it gets ugly pretty fast because the IT manager sees the bill, has a heart attack, and
Yeah, and then it's difficult to justify why you set up this that should help you, and now it's not helping you, it's giving you more grief because the implementation was not set up correctly.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's really good, or my recommendation is, if you have a strong foundation, and I always come to this, strong foundation, you can do whatever you want on that control and on a governance way to do it.
Yeah, that's what I see. Is like, a lot of customers come into Azure and they set up a site VPN, they spin up some VMs, and then it spirals out of control because they keep moving ahead without actually laying the proper foundation inside their organization.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm seeing that as well because it's starting to be really big.
Yeah. So I guess you've been to a lot of these conferences,
Yes.
and with this year at Ignite, what's caught your eye so far?
So what caught my eyes so far first is this is the biggest that I ever seen. 35,000 people on a conference like this. This is huge. I've been on this TechEd Ignite since 2005, so it's going to be 12 years that I'm attending this. At that time was TechEd North America and TechEd Europe was the two big ones, but still this is big, so it's massive. It's good for my steps, at least for my app, but what caught me the attention is there are lots of innovation coming, and they try to just show the people or show the attendees what they can do without it. So on the previous Ignites, I heard some criticism regarding that it's more marketing driven. So it's more marketing presentations.
Yeah.
In this case, I'm seeing way more technical and way more involving on the community, and I see that a little bit more. You can go deep, and the immersion of the technology that we have regarding the persons that they are here to just enable to do it, to experiment, it's huge.
Yeah.
And that's why I really love right now the Ignite. So far, it's been one of the best that I have been.
Yeah, I have to admit, like the first two had some very serious logistical challenges, and I really think Microsoft has listened to that feedback. I know that there's some things people are still complaining about, but I think they've really tried to pull it together and make a good event for people. So, I'm really happy with that as well. As far as announcements go this week, have you seen anything new that's really caught your eye? I know Azure Stack is kind of the talk of the town because that's been a long time in the making, and I personally thought it'd be out sooner, but it is quite an undertaking. So
it is, and people doesn't understand, or a lot of people doesn't understand why it takes so long. But Azure Stack is huge. Imagine, for example, that for a region on Azure, you need to deploy, to enable, for example, SQL on a region, for example, you need to deploy 1,000 instances.
Yeah.
But that's Azure, because Azure is big. It's millions and millions of servers, millions of virtual machines.
Yeah.
And then it's when you set up that to deploy on that massive scale is one thing. When you need to scale down to a 4 unit, you cannot have exactly the same thing to deploy 1,000, for example, SQL.
Yeah.
To enable just the SQL service, the Azure SQL on Azure Stack, and the path that they are going, I believe that is truly, and is for me, in my best knowledge, in my personal opinion, is a true hybrid platform.
Yeah.
So you have exactly the same APIs, and you experience with me with Azure, with Windows Azure Pack, that was the first interaction that they had with this hybrid platform, but the APIs were not the same.
No, and the underlying infrastructure was so complicated to stand up. Like, I remember looking at the reference design, and it was something ridiculous, like 21 VMs before you could even do anything.
And you have to, and it's like that. Azure doesn't have System Center, for example.
Yeah.
And Windows Azure Pack heavily relies on System Center.
Yeah.
And the reason I don't have System Center on Azure is because of the scalability of the product. It's not built for this kind of environments. And it makes totally sense because it's an enterprise product. It's not this massive global scale infrastructure that Azure has.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I remember going to Microsoft Management Summit and we're like trying to make System Center be a private cloud platform. And, you know, I love System Center, but it was never really built for that. And I notice this is happening with a lot of product lines where they're burning things to the ground and they're starting with like a cloud first mentality to build up their solutions. And, you know, it kind of started with Microsoft and it's moved out to different vendors that are sitting on top of Azure and even just interacting with Windows.
Yeah, I totally agree because I think it's for different sets of organizations, and that's what it's good. System Center, I'm one of the fans of System Center in some projects or some components, but the rest is it doesn't support this scale. I did some implementations of private cloud with some of those components, and it's not an easy process.
Yes.
To just you need to configure one, and you configure all of those, and then the integration between it's starting to be way better now with the version 2016. But I start the private cloud, the really private cloud with System Center 2012, and it was not that easy, like you see on the reference guide. Oh, just connect, for example, Virtual Machine Manager with Operations Manager, and then you can connect as well with Configuration Manager, and then yes, you can do that. But then when you're starting to really go deep, then it's starting to make a little bit more confusion and starts to be a little bit more complicated to get to that level. Azure Stack for that, it's like, I was in a session that they say that within 1 week they deploy Azure Stack and is ready to go. Wow. And that it's like it's 40 hours of work. How you can implement a truly hybrid solution, a private cloud, because you have an option on Azure Stack to have only offline. So basically it's your private cloud. Yeah. In 1 week. So even for us as we are consultants, that's it's a lot of automation, a lot of process that you're doing at the time, because it takes months, if it's not a year at least, on the old time on the System Center, for example, if you compare to build this.
Yes, totally. Yeah, it's a different world. Like I noticed with a lot of these solutions, it's really cutting down, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but we're spending less time on the initial setup and more on delivering the actual value.
Yes, and that for me, it's where I think is going to be really cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. What's your blog right now?
So my blog is azurecentric.com, and you guys can follow on the Twitter. That is MDNOGA, and that's my Twitter handle.
Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Kevin. All the time.
Yeah, thanks.